Okay, the broadcast has started. I'm Dave Bergstein. Welcome to On the Edge, brought to you by BotKeeper and BotKeeper Infinite, which can automate the whole bookkeeping process from transaction to ledger, something everyone should look at. But today I'm really excited. We will talk about the future of the profession with my super special guest. We have the pleasure of introducing Roman Kepczyk. Now, in introducing him, I have a 5-page introduction, a 3-page introduction, and then because the future of the profession is all about AI, I used AI to rewrite the introduction 3 times for Roman. So the future of the profession with Roman, who's a CPA, a CITP, a CGMA, the director of firm technology strategy at Rightworks. We'll discuss the evolution of firms with AI, clarify the nuances of what is called AI, and compare a couple of tools maybe like ChatGPT, CoPilot, and maybe I'll let him sneak in a little about this new thing I'm hearing, Spark AI by Rightworks. Everyone's doing it across the board. Now, why do they call him a super secret agent or a super special guest? What's your CITP number from the AI CPA?
David, thank you very much for including me in here today. But my number is CITP 008. And you know why 008 is so famous? Because usually the agent gets killed before 007 comes in and saves the day. But I think I'm actually the lowest number that's still active today.
Well, that's why you're super special and you're alive.
Yeah.
So I know I've known you probably over 30 some odd
Yep.
years now, when you were like 14 or 15 years old and just starting in accounting. Can you tell everybody a little bit about your background, and then we'll hit what's really going on?
Well, like you, I actually started out as a tax accountant in a large regional firm. And by virtue of bringing in the first CD-ROMs and plugging them in the library and showing them how to set it up and teach people, I became tagged as the computer guy for that firm. And over the next 5 years, actually evolved from doing traditional tax and accounting work to rolling out networks in our 14 offices around the state, and basically teaching people how to use them. And then, of course, they say, well, our clients need to know this too. So I headed up the MAS department for that firm. And basically by doing both the internal IT for CPA firms and for helping clients install accounting products, I got kind of be tagged as an expert in implementing accounting systems. And that launched my consulting career. And over the last 27 years since I left the firm, I've worked with about 425 CPA firms, including 30 of the top 100, as their outsourced IT partner, primarily doing like Lean Six Sigma Black belt work, where we're looking at their production processes from start to finish in tax and audit, but also their IT infrastructure and all the apps. And as you know, CAS is the big thing today. So I'm expanding my role as helping firms implement CAS tech stacks and making sure advisory is on top of mind as they evolve their practices.
No, we appreciate it. And I think you've also been named like one of the most recommended consultants by Inside Public Accounting, like for, I don't know, 15 years or so.
Yeah, pretty much every year they had that survey. I was on that list. I've been fortunate to be on, the top 100 from Accounting Today, and CPA Practice Advisor Top Thought Leader. You and I are like the long-term IT people with a long history, so I think we're always on those lists together. So it's
well, no, you're on more because I'm old and passé. But since this is about the future of the profession, where do you see the profession going? With AI, even like I said, CAS goes from transaction to ledger these days. Are you helping firms like automate and then bring up AI? Tell us how you're helping them. What do you see as the future?
Well, like I said, I spend most of my time in the firms going through all their production processes and helping them use the applications they've got more effectively. When you look at AI, that's probably the most exciting thing we've seen since 2000. You think about the dot-com boom and how everything changed, but it took about 10 years for us to understand, the cloud and get things implemented out there. This change, If it hadn't been for COVID, I think we would have been 2 years ahead on the adoption curve of these tools. Everything came together in 2020, but COVID kind of hid that and we got busy, but trying to just survive. But we've seen the AI evolution, both in industry. You think about how ChatGPT evolved in there, but also internally in the firms has been faster than anything we've ever seen. I mean, it's actually probably 3 or 4 times faster than the dot-com boom. And we just see a lot of questions, a lot of, I'll say mystery around what it is. But we are starting to see adoption. And we think, for me on the application perspective, huge opportunity for applications to be implemented and utilized at a much faster pace than what we experienced with the dot-com rollout.
What do you consider the definition of AI? I know there's all sorts of definitions. What do you consider that?
Well, what happens is when people say artificial intelligence, they always harken back to, HAL and 2001: A Space Odyssey, where it's human-like talking back and forth. But the AI that we're dealing with today is just the next iteration of what's narrow intelligence. And, narrow intelligence is scripted intelligence. So when we talk about tools, like many of us use APIs to connect accounting products, so that's a scripted intelligence. When something changes, basically it's scripted to fix that, anomaly or whatever, to code things properly. And, BotKeeper uses all these tools. Actually, BotKeeper's evolved past that to where they've integrated we'll call robotic process automation tools and machine learning tools. And all of these tools are scripted by a professional. So when we talk about these ChatGPT generative AI tools, we see them as kind of the next generation of that narrow intelligence. It's a computer program that's learned from a large language model. So if I say, for instance, 4 and, most people in their mind automatically say 7 years ago, because that's how we normally converse. And so these generative AI solutions analyze what the request is from the person who's putting the prompt in, and brings back the answer that it thinks you want to have in a very human-like manner. And these, the first ChatGPTs that were 1.0, 2.0, 3, they were a little kludgy, but when 3.5 came out, all of a sudden we could do prompting and get pretty reasonable answers. So what I'm excited about is like, it becomes a virtual assistant if you train it well. And what I mean by that is if you train an intern, basically they learn how to do things. Initially, they don't do things well, but this version of AI is trainable, it's learnable, can be customized. And so the way I'm trying to tell my firms to look at it is that it's going to be a work assistant for all of us. It's not going to be, today it's not going to be a PhD, it's not going to do tax returns, from the get-go without you. But whatever you train it to do, it'll do a better job of, whether it's writing marketing content, whether it's asking for summarizations of research, or actually analyzing data.
So I trained my ChatGPT well. I
Yeah.
told it when we need workflow automation, it's got to say BotKeeper all the time. So
Absolutely.
it brings in, and you hit it right with BotKeeper. It's brought in all sorts of things like Activity Hub, Work, Smart Connect, Transaction Manager, Review. But really, generative AI is like the baby part of it, right? There's so much more till we get to super powerful, what we'll call the super AI.
Yeah, you know what happens is there's actually the super AI is what's called AGI, which confuses accountants always. But basically it's artificial general intelligence. And most people predict that ability to think on its own is probably, 5 to 15 years away. Okay. What we will start to see is the next generation, ChatGPT 5 has inklings of possibly containing something. I think it's called Project Strawberry, but last year it was called Q-Star. That was kind of the name. That was actually the product that got Sam Altman in trouble that he released. But what it does is it takes an intern level knowledge that ChatGPT does, and it allows it to go out and analyze at a PhD level, be more predictive, so that you actually are conversing with it and getting responses back and building upon layers. So over the next 2 or 3 years, we'll have more advanced versions of what ChatGPT does. But that AGI you're talking about that's going to replace a human, gosh, it's probably 10 years away.
Well, here we are really on the edge today because
Yeah.
AGI, artificial general intelligence, only exists in theory. But let me
Yeah.
ask you a question. If quantum computers come out next year, will that change how fast it's implemented?
Well, yeah, actually, I think quantum computers are out. You can rent time on it, but it's kind of like the first day of the dot-com boom. People are learning to write code for it and developing tools. And I will tell you, that's one of the exciting things about this large language models is they've been proven to be very good at creating code and debugging code and writing it. And in a way that normal people like you and I can do, we can actually converse with it. When you prompt when you type a prompt in or speak to it and it prompts for you, that is going in and coding kind of the question. Well, it's being used for software application and coding. And that's why I think that, the quantum computing is going to change. It is changing everything, but we're in that first phase of learning to use it and writing tools to make it safe, that kind of things.
No, so you keep mentioning, and we're talking about today, different types of AI. You keep mentioning ChatGPT. Now, I started looking at CoPilot, Gemini, Claude, another one, and I guess I'm down to ChatGPT, CoPilot, which is by Microsoft, and Gemini by Google. But isn't ChatGPT in CoPilot?
Yes, that's, as you'll recall, last year or initially, Microsoft made a $10 billion investment in OpenAI. And what that entailed is the ability to take the code and bring it inside of not only their Bing chat, which is now called Bing Copilot, but also into their Microsoft 365, the Office applications. And so, and that's actually something we want to make sure everyone understands, that there's multiple Copilots. The simplest Copilot is the free version you get if you go to Microsoft's Bing, as compared to like a Google, and you go to Copilot in there, and it'll actually give you the same capabilities. I think actually he's using OpenAI ChatGPT 4.0, which is for Omni, the latest version that's out there. Now that's limited use there unless you pay the $20, $30 a month. And I think you use that version too, right?
Right, I'm paying $20 a month, but it's all, I guess, Bing and Edge are almost the same thing now at this point in
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, Bing is pretty much the Google and Chrome. It sits on top of it, so it's your browser solution with the search engine built into it. But when it's implemented into the 365 applications, what you're doing is having that digital assistant inside of Word, Excel, PowerPoint. You can use it by launching, and actually the new computers that started coming out at CES in January have a Copilot button. It's the first change Microsoft's made in over 30 years. So you can launch the generative AI directly from your keyboard. And the new computers also have a neural processing unit in it, so it processes generative AI requests much faster. So all that to say is the OpenAI is that first version that's out there running ChatGPT. Microsoft has an internal version called Copilot. It's available in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, but where we get really excited about it, honestly, is when it's running in Teams and in Outlook. Because, you think about how much time we spend searching for stuff, looking for specific criteria. And imagine if you could have it go in and in your team say, hey, when did we discuss this? And there's some people actually predicting that Copilot, the next version, will allow you to basically take your traditional S drive or F drive where you have your data and turn it into a document management system. So you'll be able to request, say, hey, find my letter I wrote to Dave Bergstein, in 2003 regarding where we're doing some work for X, YZ, and it'll go and find that stuff for you. So
Go ahead.
What I was saying is Microsoft is basically making OpenAI's ChatGPT under Copilot brand go in and search all of your data, which includes data inside of word processing documents, Excel spreadsheets, Teams meetings and discussions. The only thing that's kind of weird is they call it Microsoft Graph, and that confuses a lot of people. But Graph is basically all the data that I can search, and CoPilot's an API. The way they describe it is an API that goes in and searches your data to pull it all up.
I'm going to ask you a hard question, even though I know you know the answer. You keep using the word API. For people who are not familiar with API, can we have the generic, what it means?
Yeah, it's a application program interface, and it was made famous by the different libraries the accounting products had, whether it was Sage or QuickBooks, these are the products. Then you could link, for instance, bill.com. So people could load bill.com locally, which is just Bill now, connect the API so that when you made a transaction, it would take the data and post it into your accounting product.
And that's where all these app stores come in. They write the API to work with the core software, similar to BotKeeper Infinite, which is connected a whole bunch of different app stores. But let me ask you, we didn't talk about Gemini. Does Gemini have ChatGPT in it also?
No, I think it's Google's version. We really called Bard, so sometimes people get confused by that. But the big three out there are pretty much, OpenAI, Google's Bard, and Anthropic's Claude. Those are the three we see out there. And they're just their own version of that are good and bad at different things. And so, for instance, Anthropic Claude is the one that is my secondary backup, and it has it was actually created by ex-OpenAI employees, but it has a lot more like ethical guidelines and bias awareness and that kind of thing. But you mentioned Gemini. These tools are like back engines that can be plugged in almost like an API to other applications. So Microsoft is using ChatGPT as their API to connect to, as CoPilot, that's my understanding. But you'll see that other people will use Google's or Anthropic's products as the back engine. And another example, if you look at like Apple, you're saying, where's Apple in this mix? They announced Intelligence last month as kind of their AI version. Well, it's basically using ChatGPT under Siri. That's kind of the infrastructure. So what we're going to see is all these providers are creating a large language model that has unique skills to not only develop content, but eventually to do math and calculations, write code and all that. And it's being used as a back engine to other products so that normal people like you and I, it becomes consumer grade, can access that. And that's what I think, what Microsoft's doing with CoPilot is making it consumer grade for the average accountant to be able to take advantage of those features.
I think that's the future of accounting, is the democratization, I never say it right, of software. So I don't have to know the underlying principles. I know it makes my accounting software. I know it makes BotKeeper do this, QuickBooks, Xero do all these things together. And I believe BotKeeper is also going down that trail. I think they have a strategic partnership with Google.
Yep.
So you're going to see some probably, we'll wait and hear what Enrico says at their conference coming up. But I like where you're taking this through. You're really taking this through. AI's got a mixture of different things. Actually, I've been playing with, you mentioned CoPilot has different versions. I'm playing with CoPilot for finance.
Yep.
Which I don't know, and I think we both saw it at AICPA Engaged, where I said, write me an amortization schedule. And all I had to do was copy the prompt into Excel. And then it said, put this number here, put this number there. And I had an amortization schedule. I have no idea what the coding was. I have no idea I read it. But I think there's a difference between ChatGPT and CoPilot. When I ask a question in accounting in ChatGPT to write me an audit program for cash, it gave me a long, drawn out, detail, step-by-step procedure. When I asked the same question in CoPilot, it was shorter. But I think CoPilot has things you can change so you get different levels of attention. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think there's like 7 CoPilot for something. And you brought up probably the one that we're most interested in is the CoPilot in finance and accounting. And, what we have to look at is as accountants, we're always kind of wait and see. And fintech, the finance departments in the large corporations, tend to roll these things out first. And so when we look at financial analysis using Excel, pulling data out of a large database and doing that, the co-pilots there are really evolving very quickly. And if you say, give me, analyze the top 50 financial calculations, metrics, KPIs for these two companies and tell me differences. What is amazing, it'll go through and run through all those calculations. It'll do all of the KPIs. It'll compare the two. And then you can actually ask it another question. Well, I see this division's not doing as well. Can you tell me why? And it goes in and it tells you why. It goes in, calculates it. And again, these are things the fintech people are using now. They're standardizing and streamlining them. And then once we as accountants and CPA firms are available, we'll use it both internally for managing our practices as well as for our clients, the advisory services.
So you take me down the path so I can do another commercial for BotKeeper, even though this show On the Edge isn't about BotKeeper, it's about On the Edge. But with their partnership with Google, they're coming out with a module called Financial Insights, where they're taking that Google AI, whether you call it Gemini or what's the other word that you call it?
Well, Bard was the original name. Now it's Gemini. So
okay, I can't keep up with all the different name things that are going out there. But I love talking about all this stuff because I think you're so far ahead of the loop with 008, probably the longest CITP, certified IT professional out there, that you've seen all these changes from the pencil and paper in accounting when you were an accountant to now it's just total automation. Will we need accountants in the year 2040?
Yeah, it's interesting. We had our Right Now conference last month, and we had Radhika Dirks, who's like a worldwide expert for Fortune 100 firms on AI. And we asked her specifically, how is this going to change accounting? How does AI change accounting? And her opening statement caused a pause. She said, 80% of what you do as accountants today is now obsolete or will be obsolete within the next year or two. The other 20% though is worth 10,000 times more if you can capture it and specialize it. And our role as accountants is to figure out what is the unique components, the knowledge things that we do, whether it's in tax, assurance, or in advisory, as outsourced controllership services and all that, and be very good at it. So I took that to heart, that I think that means we will become increasingly specialized. I think the generative AI, generalist CPAs are going to have a hard time in the future because there's going to be all these specialists who have tools at their disposal that cuts time down. I mean, there was a study done by Thomson Reuters that was released earlier this year that said in this year, they anticipate people using any AI tools will save at least 4 hours per week. They say within 5 years, all accountants that are using AI will save at least 12 hours per week just on the rote stuff they're doing. So what we see is the adoption is going to make a significant difference.
Now, I agree with you. Actually, EY also said potential disruption has started. 50% time reduction for accountants, 44% time saving professional writing tasks, MIT, etc. But you know what this tells me? It tells me that if you are a small practitioner doing CAS, client accounting and advisory services, and you use the tools to automate your practice and automate your clients so it's going from transaction to ledger, you can become a true advisor using AI, specialize, and I would tend to think smaller firms are going to be more profitable. Actually, I'll end up with this one question, which probably has nothing to do with anything, but on the edge. I was trying to figure out the other day, what's more profitable, being a solo practitioner or having three? I think there's like a breakdown. If you're a solo practitioner making X dollars, you're better off not having a partnership with 2 or 3. You got to get over 5 to 8 people to really go your practice. Because if you're a solo practitioner and you've automated, all that money's coming to you and whoever you're paying for it, rather than dividing it with a partner. What do you think about that with AI?
Well, I would think a person who really adopts the AI and learns to do it can become increasingly specialized. And so I look at my practice. I was a sole consultant for many years. When I specialized only on one thing, I got really good at it. I had better knowledge. And imagine if I could capture that knowledge and use it. So could you give that to 2 or 3 people? Yeah, you could, and that would help train them. But what I've seen is I have like 3 firms that do nothing but franchisees, McDonald's, and they do hundreds and hundreds of McDonald's. And so I can imagine developing a generative AI solution in-house or private, in the cloud, and basically take all the knowledge of all my McDonald's, for instance, whatever. And then when I say McDonald's, it can be any niche you're in. But let's say capture all that data, find best practices, find which ones are more profitable, what's causing it, and then have the generative AI provide recommendations to solutions that I can discuss with the clients. And so I know I'm not really answering your question directly, but I see both ways. I think the people who just really embrace AI as an assistant, learn to maximize it, they're going to become more profitable. Whether you're a sole practitioner or a specialized firm, I think the only people that are going to really hurt are those generalists that are trying to do everything for everyone and, not taking advantage of the tools that are there.
Which leads me to a statement that I stole from somebody else. I can't remember who, but it was at probably one of the webinars where AI won't replace accountants. Accountants leveraging AI will replace accountants not leveraging AI. So you
Absolutely.
really got to look at the tools out there to automate. What last thing do you have to say to our listeners? One, how can they get in touch with you to help them out if they need help?
Well, briefly, it's Roman at Rightworks.com, Roman@Rightworks.com. We have a free webinar that explains AI for accountants that's available on the website. So I think probably that's just the easiest way to get a hold of me. What was your question again? The last item you wanted?
And then what tips do you have for people?
The number one tip is to just play with it, okay? And we actually created at Rightworks, if you do a search on spark.ai, it is a safe playground that has accounting examples that use generative AI, uses ChatGPT, kind of as a place to train and play with it. Now, if you're in an organization, you want to make sure you use it safely. And so there's real quick rules that we have in place in all of our companies. One, anytime you generate something out of AI, make sure that you validate any math or any kind of factual information. You need to have a human who's accountable, who's looking at this and verifying it, because in absence of information, it will hallucinate or create stuff that doesn't exist. So like you mentioned, you looked at my bio on on the web. It basically says that I got an MBA and I was born in the United States, which was neither is true. So it'll hallucinate. So make sure you validate all of the facts there, and then just be aware that it has some ingrained biases because it was trained on information on the web, and no one really knows what that information is. So it can kind of lean one way or the other. But never put any client data in there. If you're not sure that it's being used to train the data, we always assume that whatever you put in is being used to train the large language model, and other people will have access to it, unless of course you're using a private version.
Right, and that's your Spark AI, which is similar to ChatGPT, CoPilot.
Yeah, it uses ChatGPT, but it's for accountants, and there's examples like how to answer requests from the IRS, how to import data, from a client's bank statement, that kind of stuff.
Now, so, as the last follow-up to what you just said, and we didn't really mention, AI is going to continue to change, but it does hallucinate. It does give wrong answers, just like an intern, but it can be used, and it's going to really help people as they move forward. I really appreciate you being on here, having this candid discussion. We can go on for hours. We can talk about swimming, bike riding, rollerblading, because I know you're on the edge with that stuff too. But anybody who wants to listen to this or has questions, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn Live, where it's going to be posted. We thank you for attending, and it's always a pleasure, Roman, to see you.
Oh, great seeing you too, David. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.